What is up, guys? Doing another one down solo, no downs, no assets, all that good stuff. So today I'm tackling rats. This is going to be a doozy of a video. It's going to be a long one. Because I decided to compile all the days and the escape into one instead of breaking it up into separate videos, because that seems like it'd be kind of annoying. I know I did that with Election Day, but that was because there's like two different branching parts of Election Day to go through, so I just went ahead and, made this one big video. Regardless. I do go for all loot in this run. I do cook all 7 meth bags. I do steal back the meth on day 2, as well as, secure the extra money bags that you get. And I was able to get 12 out of the 13 extra loot bags on day 3. I did. It's actually kind of funny what happened on that last money bag. So that's why there's actually not all loot in the title. I'm probably gonna put like all loot -1 or something because it was close. It was kind of, it was dumb what happened. You'll see if you stick around that long in the video. Anyway, so rats is really straightforward heist, or the first part. Well, no, every day is actually really simple, and if you just go for the completion, this heist is extraordinarily easy. The only thing that kind of complicates this heist is going for the extra loot and things like that. So of course, cooking is a really simple process, although it does take longer in rats just by design, because the heist is just pardon me, cook-off. It's more the cooking is more sped up, I feel like. I'm pretty sure that's just a common thing. I don't know what the times are on that or anything. However, I do know that on rats, in general, it feels like it takes longer to cook more bags, regardless. So the build I'm running is just a SMG build I was kind of running around with. Not even really an SMG build in particular. I just wanted to make a build kind of around using the Tatanka as a crit machine and then having a grenade launcher backup. And it worked out really well. I didn't have as many points as I would have liked to put into maybe even trying to get like body expertise. I gave it some light consideration to picking it up. However, I think that only in a few circumstances would have really made a big difference. Actually, I would have much preferred to pick up Jack of all trades ace, so I could just pack an extra ammo bag. I feel like that would solve any problems I ever even remotely had with this build, which I never actually ran out of ammo entirely. I was always able to manage it pretty efficiently, which is aided by the fact that this map is pretty much all close quarters. So Tatanka is a great SMG because how easy it is to mod it up to max stability, given some skills, and also still able to keep it concealable enough to get crits, equip your suppressor on it, and the whole 9 yards. It has a very large base magazine, and if you pick up the skill that gives you 15 extra bullets in your magazine in the technician tree, you can get it up to like 79 bullets in the mag. It's something ridiculous. It's a really great gun all around, I feel like, so that's why I wanted to use it, and I just enjoy using it. All of the other high damage SMGs sit in a similar case, although the Tatanka does have slightly better ammo pickup than any of them, if I'm not mistaken. I believe the Tatanka has a range from 1 to 6 ammo pickup, whereas the others generally, like the Krinkov and the Jackal and things like that, generally have 1 to 4. So it's marginally better. Enough to kind of make a bit of a difference. This run was actually one of the first runs I had done on my channel. I believe the very, very first one was Firestarter, but this was like the second one. And I believe when I made that video I said I wanted to revisit this one and come back and do all bags. I never envisioned that I was going to be coming back doing all bags and doing no downs at that point in time. But it is what we're doing now, of course. I'm using Sicario in this run. because after I've practiced with it, I have grown to love Sicario. It's probably one of my 2 favorite decks to use, right along there with Kingpin. And depending on the heist I do will depend, or will kind of change, what type of perk deck I'm using. Certain heists just don't cater very well to certain styles of play. So on heists where there's not a lot of cover and not a lot of places to hide, it's probably going to be more efficient for me to use something like Sicario instead of Kingpin, because I'm really limited by the injector time and things like that. It's also really easy to get killed when you're using Kingpin whenever you're waiting for your injector to recharge. There's not really anything to cushion you from getting killed all that much up until your injector recharges. But that being said, Kingpin is still one of the better perk decks, even for no downs, I feel like. Of course, Rogue is still really good. It's just I've ran Rogue for so long playing this game now. It's been my go-to perk deck for a really, well, one of the ones I go to for a really long time. Anarchist, of course, is really good, but I don't like using Anarchist for no downs. I do enjoy just using it in general play, though. I'm not a super big fan of armor builds, not because I don't like armor, well, not because I think armor builds are bad, because they're not. Armor builds are actually fantastic. And actually, in some cases, armor builds can be more beneficial to me as a player if I'm doing no downs, because armor is one of the things that has like the most cushion. Your armor recharges all the time. You can take more shots like that, and you get that 2-second vulnerability grace period, and various things. However, I don't like using it because of the lack of mobility. Some people deal with that a lot better than I do. However, I like running around like a scared little man. So, I really enjoyed using Sicario. Like I said in my Beneath the Mountain run, I was originally going to use it there. However, the end area with snipers was giving me a lot of grief, and by the time I got to that part, I didn't want to deal with snipers and then getting me down pretty easily. Snipers don't one-shot you when you're running Sicario. That's not the impression I'm trying to give off. However, when I got up to the mountain, if I got a spawn where multiple snipers spawned simultaneously when I came out of the mountain, all it would take is, 2 snipers to lock onto me, fire, and me not dodge, and then I'm dead. So, of course, that could have happened with, that could have happened just as easily with Rogue as well, except my odds of getting downed by 2 sniper shots like that was, as a base chance, higher with Sicario than it was with Rogue. Kind of an interesting thing to note there is Rogue and Sicario play very much the same way, except Sicario is kind of an in-between with Kingpin and Rogue. Rogue allows you to have more dodge all the time. However, Sicario allows you to place yourself in positions with the smoke bomb that you couldn't with Rogue, and be almost guaranteed to not die. So, in certain regards, when you're having to, do objectives that require a long interaction or something like that, it might actually be more beneficial to use Sicario just due to the smoke. I also like the armor gating that's kind of involved with the perk deck. Still pretty easy to die with it, because of course it's dodge, it can be finicky, just like anything else can. However, I enjoy running it quite a bit. And I don't feel like the less dodge than Rogue is really super detrimental to it in any way. And having the utility of the smoke really makes up for that, which is why I chose to use it with this particular build. Of course, with Kingpin builds, you can have a lot more points to play around with, because you don't have to bother picking up. Sneaky Bastard or Low Blow or other things like that. However, you can to increase your EHP a little bit. They can get up to like 15 dodge. Standing with Sneaky Bastard and Kingpin, and then you can get up to like 25 if you're sprinting. Just a little bit of extra cushion. Maybe it'll protect you against that dozer you're running past while you're using your injector or something like that. As far as tactics for this heist are concerned, which I haven't talked about up until this point, if you've noticed, that's because there's really not too much going on other than cooking meth, and placing my first aid kits in strategic locations, which is, of course, something I try to do in any sort of holdout, is just strategically place my first aid kits so that I can use them in any sort of effective location. I did make a mental note of what ingredients were where, or I tried to make a mental note of what ingredients were where, so I knew where to run to whenever I needed ingredients. Assault waves fell pretty nicely between all my cooking sessions, so I had plenty of time to run to and fro to get my ingredients and start working on the next batch. My converteds didn't get caught as much this time around running the heist as they did the first time I ran it. The first video. The first video I ran for rats, my converts got stuck a time or two. And actually with the nerf that converts recently got, the 2 times my converts do get stuck, they actually end up dying relatively quickly and keeping the enemies at bay on the outside. So it actually was more beneficial to me that they got stuck in the way that they did this time around. Although they didn't stay stuck for very long because, like I said, they would die relatively quickly being next to the enemy spawns. So I'm actually really glad the converts got the quote-unquote nerfs that they got pretty recently. It actually made them a bit more useful in that regard. The only difficult part of this heist was going to be having to move all of the meth bags. However, of course, this isn't like cook-off in the sense that I have to wait for the escape van because it continuously leaves. Pardon me. I'm able to, of course, move the bags at any point in time I want to after the escape vans arrive, which is pretty convenient because that means during assault wave breaks I can pick up ingredients as well as move bags. And even when the cops do take bags, on rats, they don't take them off map like they do in cook-off, I believe. I'm pretty sure they do in cook-off. It's rare that I let them do that, which is why I can't remember. But on rats in particular, they take them to the back corner of the property beside the truck where ingredients spawn, which is actually kind of a handy place for them to move them to because that's closer to the truck than where I normally store them, which is, or where most people store them, which is in this back room where I boarded up the windows with planks. So here in a little while, enemies actually end up taking those bags and moving them outside, and I do come up and try to stop them, but then after I realize that they moved the bags to a slightly better position, I just let them, or I didn't bother going and grabbing the bags and trying to bring them back up here. It was actually just beneficial just to leave them out there. So there's not too terribly much that Tatanka can't just shred apart in a matter of seconds. Combined with the grenade launcher secondary, it made for a pretty good combo. If you weren't worried about concealment, you could consider bringing the what's it called? The piglet. You could consider bringing the piglet instead. Or I could have considered bringing the piglet instead for this particular loadout. I'm not sure. I didn't play with it, but maybe you could get the Tatanka and the piglet down to low enough concealment that you could still get crits. However, the reload time on the piglet just takes ages. In comparison to, you know, doing it with the GL40 or the China Puff or the Arbiter or the Little Friend or any other grenade launcher. The piglet's reload speed is absolutely atrocious, and if the reload speed was even marginally better, I feel like more people overall would use it. I feel like it could be a really great weapon if its reload speed wasn't nearly as long. However, you can get countermeasures for that if you really wanted to use it. The skill that comes to mind is Bloodthirst. Yes, Bloodthirst basic. Killing an enemy with Bloodthirst aced. Just the Bloodthirst skill in general is a good one to pick up if you're wanting to use the piglet in your builds. I might do something about that in the future in a builds video. Probably not, but considering I just mentioned it and there's really nothing else to it. But thankfully for this heist, a grenade launcher is excellent to clear out the downstairs area before enemies run up the stairs. The layout of the map is really good such that you can, you know, shoot walls over top of the meth lab station, and you can actually kill enemies on the stairwell that aren't without having to like poke yourself from out around the meth lab station. I couldn't remember when I checked earlier if there was one muriatic in there or not. I put that first aid kit there in case I need to jump out the second story to get down there, and I can land on the first aid kit to heal myself. Or if I'm just running past that spot, the first aid kit can pick me up as I'm running back into the house. Saw the convert was going to die, that's why I held on to that one. Or just waited so I could go ahead and convert my next guy. I think more than anything, this heist was kind of a, or this day, rather, was a battle of resources. Trying to keep my, or trying to make sure I didn't use all my first aid kits, which I wasn't really using them, in the sense that like I was having to use them to heal myself continuously, but just placing them in areas that I knew I would probably need them. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm not sure how many I actually ended up using. However, it didn't feel like it was all that many. I was able to defend myself pretty well and keep myself from being shot down by enemies. I'm definitely glad the intricacies of cooking were changed from what they used to be a long time ago. I remember, of course, when the game first came out, and for the longest part of its life cycle, if I'm not mistaken, you had to memorize certain cooking lines because some of them were actually tricks, and Bane wouldn't tell you the correct ingredient at all, or tell you if it was actually an incorrect ingredient. But now, of course, it's a very standardized system, and you only have to listen for the first or second line that Bane says. So, of course, Bane will call an ingredient, and in the next line he will either confirm or deny it. And if he confirms it, it's going to be that one. And if he denies it, then you have to wait for the third line to figure out what the ingredient should actually be. So it's a lot easier than it used to be. I do remember, I can't remember what the line was. I think it's something along the lines of F me, it should have been caustic soda or something like that. And it wasn't actually caustic soda, it was like hydrogen, maybe? Or maybe I might have it backwards. It was a line very similar to that. But I remember it very clearly, and it would always trip up new people who weren't used to cooking. And people who weren't really paying all that much attention and just heard them call out the ingredient. This is where they started taking all my bags away from me. I didn't want to just sprint out because uppers hadn't recharged yet, and didn't want to get caught with my pants down. I was able to get, I think, that bag back, yeah. Had to let go of the rest of them though. I don't remember if both or only one of my converts got stuck here, or if either of them got stuck. I remember. No, okay, I know one of them. Okay, this one. This one didn't. I don't think the one outside did either. I think he's just taking a long time. I think he got distracted shooting some people.
Shield guy!
Oh gosh, that guy almost got me. Stupid heavy swats. Heavy swats are definitely the thing that makes one down probably more difficult than most other difficulties. They're the big jump, in my opinion. Well, I don't even know if that can really be considered much of an opinion, considering that consistently they do the most damage over periods of time. I mean, a dozer, of course, can eradicate you in a one shot if your armor's down, but heavy swats have faster rate of fire weapons, generally pretty insane accuracy. Recently learned that they have no damage fall off. The heavy swats don't. Other units do, but heavy swats don't have damage fall off, and so they're just as deadly at any given range and do a consistent 225 damage, if I'm not mistaken. So they're quite a lot of fun to deal with. Of course, one to be kind of wary of these snipers. Snipers are definitely no fun.
Watch out, it's a sniper.
And whenever I was outside, I would try to make careful note of if I had used uppers, or if uppers had activated, I mean, or not, because it would often, or like, if I had used uppers, I didn't want to just charge out through a big mess of enemies and risk getting down just trying to get back into the house. It's usually safer to cool it for about 20 or so seconds before you have to run out into the next area. And of course, for like at least 8 of those seconds, the smoke bomb can cover you if you need it. So didn't mean to shoot my hostage there. This kind of happened on accident. I think the only real downside to this Tatanka is I was tempted to say it's subpar reload, but even then, this reload isn't that bad. I did have I can't remember what the 2 skills are called. However, I had the skill where if you kill 2 enemies with an SMG in auto fire mode, you'll reload it faster to a certain percentage depending on how many bullets are left in your magazine. And I also have the skill in the mastermind tree that gives you 15% faster reload speed. I do admittedly think it's very sad that I still don't have most of the names of these skills memorized, or at least the ones I hardly ever use in my builds. I just know their locations when I need to get to them pretty quickly. I have all their locations and memorized, so when I want the skill or when I'm thinking of the skill that I want, like, oh, I want that skill, I know exactly what tree and what location to go to. However, I just can't think of all the names, especially not the ones that they changed after skill trees came out, or like the new skill trees came out quite a while back now. It's just something I never took the time to memorize. As long as I knew where they were, that's all that mattered to me. But maybe I should take the time and do that at some point, just so I don't seem silly when I'm talking about skills when I'm doing builds videos or when I'm just doing these runs. Regardless, I think the Krinkov would have suited really well for this build as well. With the quad stack mag, you can get 60 bullets, and then of course with the skill that allows you to have 50 more bullets in the magazine, you can get that up to 75, which is, you know, just on par with the Krinkov with comparable reload time. Or you could trade that off with having the quick pull mag and just being able to reload extraordinarily quickly. Either one, you know, either one is really good. Tatanka does not have a quick pull mag variant though, due to the nature and build of its magazine being embedded in the foregrip of the gun. I guess you could consider it the foregrip of the gun. Okay, so I believe this is the second to last bag, or bag number 6. Convert had kind of moved all those enemies to him pretty conveniently for me. I was happy about that. Just allowed me to blow him to pieces before I ran into the house a few moments ago. For a second there I thought I threw in the wrong ingredient because I kind of just half listened to Bane while he was calling off the ingredients while I was outside.
First aid kit, everybody.
Yeah. And as you saw a few seconds ago, all it takes is a heavy SWAT catching you with your pants down for half a second for you to go down, which is why, of course, I flitter first aid kits all over the place so that I can stay within range of those in case something like that happens.
First aid here.
It's definitely a bummer just to turn the corner and then something just goes, no, I'm just gonna ruin your run now. And it all ends right there. It happens though. I didn't see that other bulldozer running behind the other one when I was playing. I was too focused on trying to get back upstairs and continuing to cook. Definitely a benefit to having the long magazine of the Tatanka. It's being able to do continuous fire for long periods of time. Yeah, if this had operated in a way similar to Cook-Off, where the escape driver continually comes and goes, and you have to wait for the perfect moment to move, this definitely would have been a bit harder. I'm not sure how much harder it would have been, but it definitely would have been a bit more aggravating if the van kept coming back at inappropriate times and things like that. However, I was doing a pretty good job defending myself up here in the room. Combination of GL40 and the Tatanka.
Surrender, asshole. Taser. Go. Taser. We're up to go.
All right, let's see. I'm going with hydrogen chloride. It has to be.
Shield should have got medic warrant.
Shield didn't take grenade launcher damage. I wish I could figure out what causes that. It happens to me more often than I'd like to think about, honestly. Like, I'll shoot a grenade launcher at a shield and it'll hit a plane or a collision just right and won't impact the shield at all. I'm just not sure what causes it. I've theorized before that it's just due to the way that certain collision boxes interact, but I don't know that as a hard fact. That's just kind of my theory.
We just killed us a medic. Watch out, it's a bulldozer. Bulldozer.
Bulldozer just decided he wanted to go after my convert instead of me for whatever reason. Thought that was kind of funny.
Watch out for the taser. Hands up, fucking taser is dead.
I noticed towards the tail end of this particular day that I actually didn't use my smoke as much as I thought I was going to, primarily because there just really wasn't any reason to. There were a few spots where I could, and you'll notice probably a little bit later in this video, actually. I'm not 100% sure if it's during this day or not. I've used it 2 or 3 times, of course, to run to spots where I could pick up ammo without getting shot down. However, I've also I use it in a manner somewhat similar to as I do with the Kingpin injector. The Kingpin injector, of course, you can activate at any moment when you're running through a crowd of enemies whenever you need it. It's extremely handy for that purpose. It's a little bit different with Sicario. Of course, you can't activate the grenade instantaneously. You have to throw it. just like any other throwable. However, you can strategically place it in locations that you know you'll be running through. So what I like to do when I'm crossing a large area is I like to throw the smoke bomb at about a halfway point between where I'm at and where I'm going, if I can throw it that far. So that way I greatly minimize my chances of going down. Of course, that depends on the distance to the objective. If the objective is really close, or where I'm trying to go is really close, I'll just go ahead and throw the smoke to it. For example, like down there at the base of the stairs, I'm not going to throw the smoke in the middle of the stairs since it's only going to take me, you know, a second and a half to cross that amount of space. However, I also recognize, or, you know, there are times when it's important to recognize that, okay, going from this point to this point, I risk a greater chance of probably going down. So I'll just toss my smoke grenade at about a halfway point, run in there, quickly check my health while I'm standing in the smoke, let my armor regen, if it needs to, by, you know, of course when you get shot, and then bolting out the door. Oops. Punched my keyboard for no good reason. Fairly certain this is... Yep, this upcoming bag is the last one. Just checking to see where the enemies were at. I'm seeing how that one convert over to the side was getting shot up. Looked as though they were coming from the woods, or at least from next to the house. So this is what I'm talking about here in this moment. Throwing the smoke bomb roughly to a halfway point. A little bit farther than a halfway point in this particular instance, but before I turned the corner there so that I could pass through it unfazed. It'd also give you a second to lay down a first aid kit if you need to, if you're about to be shot up, and while you're in the smoke you can use it. Smoke lasts a tad longer than the injector does, which I think is pretty nice considering that it also has a longer startup time, essentially. Then of course when I say startup time, I just mean the fact that you have to go through the action of throwing it as opposed to just activating it. My other convert was about to get eradicated. So I was going to take one of those guys after I shot the grenade launcher shot at him, but ended up getting a crit and killing him. I was going to take this guy hostage, but then I saw a heavy SWAT coming in through the window, so I decided to go ahead and take the heavy SWAT for his increased health and damage instead. Of course, I don't suppose it really mattered since I was this close to getting the heist anyway, but better safe than sorry. All in all, I really enjoyed using this particular weapon setup. I think it served me really well. I don't feel like there was really any major improvements I could have made to it. Like I said, I possibly could have picked up, or tried, to sacrifice some points in other areas to pick up body expertise. However, I didn't really feel like I had any issues killing anybody. The only issues I ever really felt like I faced with this loadout was just moments where I started to get pretty low on both grenade launcher ammo and Tatanka ammo. So I might look into slightly reorganizing this build, maybe taking away some of the reload skills I had for the Tatanka. That might not be entirely necessary and just kind of a nice quality of life thing. Of course, at the end of the day, I'd rather have ammo to use as opposed to slightly faster reload time. reload times aren't really going to matter if you don't have any ammo. So I had to play it safe here. I didn't want to risk pushing it at the expense of roughly 35-ish minutes worth of work. I don't know if the wave actually ended up ending right here. I knew it was getting pretty close, or I figured it was getting pretty close to fade.
They're coming from the forest next to the road. Take them away. Okay. What comes after that?
Yeah, phase, or the assault ended right here. I was able to sprint over to the van right fast, toss my last 7th bag in, and move on. So I did end up getting an escape. I was fortunate in the fact that I got the garage escape as opposed to overpass, although honestly I don't think it really would have made that big of a difference if I got overpass, just depending on what kind of vehicle escape or starting spawn I got on overpass. It could have been a lot worse, but I did get garage, which wasn't too bad. I was a little bit worried that I was going to run out of time when I was trying to move the bags. However, thankfully I didn't run out of time. I know in a recent video I ended up talking about how I could have, I believe it was my nightclub video. Yeah, it was. Or my true switcheroo build, where I did nightclub. Yeah, that's right. And I had all the loot bags. I talked about how I probably needed to throw the bags on the other side, but afterwards I realized that if you throw it up on the other side, the enemies will just pack it past the place you're carrying it to. If you're not fast enough, you know, depending on the number of bags that you have. So I just decided to go ahead and throw it up on the same side. It just seemed easier that way. Considering how enemies also run down the ramp from the top of the garage and will end up shooting you as you're standing on the railing picking up bags. I mean, they will if you're on the other side as well, but they can do it a little bit Pardon me. They'll do it a little bit faster if you're doing it on the side that I'm currently standing on right now. Just having a hard time getting up on the railing for some reason. There we go. This is one of those instances where having the smoke was extremely beneficial.
First aid here. You can get your first aid here.
Definitely wasn't worried about quote-unquote wasting first aid kits and arrows I was running through, since this escape was going to be so short. Just went ahead and used this first aid kit to get the rest of my health back, since I wasn't going to be revisiting that spot anymore. Although, in retrospect, I'm not sure why I was worried about the time. I think I actually had to move more bags when I did my nightclub video, or a very similar amount of bags. And I still had quite a bit of time left on that particular day, so I'm not sure why I was worried about this. However, I was prepared to switch to using a primary saw instead of a grenade launcher, just for this escape to blow through the doors a bit faster. It wouldn't save me a ton of time, however, it would save, well, it'd save me about 40 seconds. Considering they're 20-second picks, because I have no skills. So, I think they're 20-second picks. Yeah, something close to that. So it saved me around 40 seconds, which would actually be a pretty significant chunk of time, just for moving bags. I did get the van spawn that was on the back side of the building that you pick out of, as opposed to across it on the other end of the lot. Which I don't think that really mattered all that much. Both spawns are pretty easy to get bags to. However, I didn't have to expose myself nearly as much. No, I still had to expose myself because I had to walk right across the front of the building.
First aid here.
But thankfully, the enemies were taking their dear sweet time coming up through the staircase to get me. They've always seemed to take a long time to come up the stairs on this escape for some reason. I'm not sure. Which I'm thankful for. It's just kind of always struck me as a little bit odd. Which I am thankful that this convert prevented that taser from coming in here right before I finished picking the lock. It definitely would have been a bummer to be almost finished picking the lock and then end up getting tased right at the end. I hate it when that happens, like when I'm interacting with an objective, I'm almost done, then I get tased by some random taser. That was also something I worried about on day 3, of course, because you have to interact with C4, and if you don't interact with the C4, the bus blows up, and, you know, that can cause a few issues. Decided to cool it for a few seconds while I waited for uppers to recharge. Did decide, however, to go ahead and throw these bags across and just kind of darting in and out of cover pretty quickly. Figured it was safe enough since I could just throw my smoke bomb down and be in the midst of that while moving the bags. I still had about 2 minutes left on the escape, so that's not too bad. Only had to kill 3 enemies. That's funny. Day 2 was a little more problematic than I thought it was going to be. Of course, day 2 was ridiculously easy in my original video, but that's because I only had to worry about moving the 3 meth bags to the truck and then picking up the intel and then leaving. So of course the bulk of that original run was just in day 1. However, have to worry about day 2 a bit more, considering in this run I'm going for no downs, but I'm also going for all loot, meaning which means I have to steal back the meth, which means I'm going to have to deal with a lot of gangsters, which is the reason you're seeing the breadcrumb trail of first aid kits all over the place. Although I do have an alternate path that I use in case fire gets too heavy and I go through the building that's currently to my left in order to move bags back to the van. However, I only use it for 1 or 2 bags if I'm not mistaken. And I do choose to move the money before I just steal the meth, just to cut down on the amount of bag moving I have to do while under fire. I do remember from my original run, whenever I did this, I jumped out a window. I believe it was the one in the building that I'm facing, yeah, where the planks span across the 2 buildings. I had jumped from there, and I had just barely missed the little garbage unit that I was trying to jump on to cushion my fall so I wouldn't go down. And when I missed it, I fell down, of course, and then I went down, and so I had to shoot a gangster that was in front of me. However, when I shot the gangster, nobody cared. Like, he just fell down behind all his buddies and just laid there, and I was like, hey, nobody noticed? What? And it was pretty funny. I remember that. I'm not 100% sure if it's possible. I know you can kill some of these gangsters if you're really fast about it. You can kill clusters of them, and you can actually prevent the rest of the gangsters from knowing. Kind of similar to Firestarter Day 1. I'm not sure if, similar to Firestarter Day 1, if you can actually stealth this day. I just jump out this window and land within range of my first aid kit so I can get healed by it. Just to shave a bit of time off. Note here that I throw it into the back of the van so I can't possibly miss and accidentally land the loot bag in the middle of the escape zone before I can move it. Because I don't have bag throwing on this build. I needed the 2 points elsewhere, if I'm not mistaken. I can't quite remember what right now, but they're somewhere else. However, bag throwing is something I don't miss until it's gone. I never think about it in a build until I don't have it, and then I'm in the middle of a day where I'm trying to move a bunch of bags, and I'm thinking, man, I really wish I could move bags. The smoke does alert the gangsters. I did throw it to give myself some coverage while I move these bags.
Drop your weapon.
Come back through here so I didn't have to be under direct fire. However, there's a bunch of gangsters back here, and I decided to go ahead and take care of them before they caused me any grief. The gangsters can do a surprising amount of damage, as I'm sure everyone is well aware of, if you're not completely prepared for it. However, they're also relatively easy to kill, so...
First aid kit, everybody.
I was also trying to do this as fast as possible so that I could beat out the assault wave.
I need a medic bag.
Had to be careful right here because I almost went down because uppers hadn't recharged, but I decided to go ahead and push it a little bit because I did, like I said, I wanted to get here before the police assault arrived, so I didn't have to worry about fighting off waves of cops while moving just the last 2 or 3 bags, which really wouldn't have been that big of a deal, but
Hey, I got your first aid kit here.
just a small preference, I suppose. I was throwing the smoke out in a bit of a halfway point again, like I was talking about. Tried to jump into the back of the van and kept bumping off the doors. I was like, eh, forget it, it'll just go on to the side. So now the 3rd day. Of course, since this is a no assets run, I don't get the ace pilot, which means that I get technically a closer helicopter spawn. However, the helicopter itself is farther away from the bridge. I do chain these first aid kits through this area so I can, you know, have some coverage up through here. So the helicopter also has a bit more, is less, how would you say, is like a bit less stable than the one for the ace pilot. Meaning it's a little bit easier to, say, miss throwing the bag into the door and it possibly landing in the water. I wouldn't know anything about that personally, but, you know. It also, the amount of extra time it took for that helicopter to arrive in comparison to the ace pilot was diminished by the fact that I had to... Pardon me, I had to fill all these money bags and defuse all the C4 myself. So I didn't even really notice the extra time that it took for the helicopter to arrive, because honestly I don't even... I think it was basically here by the time I finished interacting with all these loot bags and with the C4 and so forth. I was slightly worried about a taser or some other unit. Well, a taser tasing me or some other unit running into the train and meleeing me and knocking me away from interacting with the C4. Of course, I took the early converts to prevent that. It's just easier to deal with that way. The hardest bags to get, well, quote-unquote, the hardest bags to get are kind of the ones that are sitting in front of this door. However, even though tasers would charge and aim at me when I was standing in that doorway, it didn't seem like they would ever actually tase me. Not 100% sure what the reason for that is, but it happened more than once on this particular day, so I'm not sure if there's some sort of invisible collision boxes in between some of the railings or something that the taser couldn't aim through, which is pretty great, if you ask me. Stupid medic preventing that shield from dying. And again, just trying to aim it back far enough so I could kill the medic, but then multiple shields ran up onto the bus and gave me a little bit of grief. Shields in extremely close quarters are kind of sucky. Yes, it was totally worth blowing that up in my face right there. Definitely wanted to be careful right here because uppers was down and I was getting on a crowded bus. And the medic was still giving me a bunch of grief. Although I saw his head poke through in the smoke, so I decided to go ahead and try to get him killed. So he wasn't giving me many fits. So having the basic helicopter spawn, like I said, is technically a bit closer, and it's on the same side as the bus exits. Yeah, see, that taser was charged, but he wouldn't ever tase me, even though I would pass in front of the stairs, which I thought was kind of interesting. I think I only got like 1 or 2 money bags, like that one, that didn't have any C4 underneath them. Oh, I had 3, never mind. So, of course, every time I defused the C4s, I just got a little bit nervous that someone was going to come onto the bus and, oh, I got 4, nice. That's pretty good. 4 out of 13 being non-C4s. I'm not sure how typical that is. Honestly, I just can't quite remember at this point. I know it's not uncommon to get like 1 or 2, but having 4, it's almost a third of the bags. It's pretty awesome. Medic was, or the shield was doing his best to protect his medic friend. Just trying to tase this guy so I could take him as a convert. However, I kept hitting the body that was just below him. I think that dozer shot me from behind there, which caused me to activate uppers. Of course, I'm waiting to move, and I'm not sure what these guys were shooting at, to be quite honest with you. I think it might have been some stray gangster that was hiding behind cover or something, because neither of my converts were over there. So that little pole, as thin as it may be, actually provides a little bit of cover, since it covers up a bit of your head. And I didn't realize I didn't have to jump to make the throw. So that was the one bag that got away. I actually considered restarting the day right there, but I also thought it would be kind of funny just to leave in. And again, I don't know why I jumped right there. I aimed a little bit lower so that I didn't miss that bag, but it was completely unnecessary to jump, and I think I do that for all the following bags. I was really sad that one got away. Prevented me from truly... I jumped for that one too. Why am I so dumb? But I would have been a little more confident in the bag throwing portion of this day if I would have had transporter basic. However, I did not. So, you know, had to deal with what I could. Assault wave was over right here, so I decided to go ahead and just move all these bags over into onto the side railing, or in between the 2 railings, however you want to put it. The sidewalk, I guess. Yeah, that's generally what those are called. They're called sidewalks. Nice. Way to go, usual. Oh goodness, it's been one of those days. Thankfully, though, I don't end up throwing any more money into the water like a doofus. I do secure the rest of the bags. I got a nice beefy little payout at the end of this, which is quite nice. Wasn't too terribly difficult. Honestly, the only really aggravating day was... well, this day was slightly aggravating, just because it was open. But it wasn't that bad, really. The only aggravating day... I think the only day I failed might have been day 2. No, I think I failed day 3 once. I don't remember what happened there, though. Maybe I bought Ace Pilot on accident, and I was like, ah, crap again. No, I don't remember. Maybe I just died like a doofus. It happens, regardless. Yeah, day 1 was the battle of attrition, but probably the easiest day, truth be told. These 2 days have less cover, and you have to move bags just kind of wide out in the open, so... I'm going to go ahead and try to get this heavy SWAT kill, because he's the one that caused me to have uppers trigger, or at least I'm pretty sure he was. Starting to get a little peakish on Tonka ammo. It's kind of funny when I was walking past that guy a moment or 2 ago that he was still focused on my convert and didn't even bother focusing on me. It never ceases to amaze me how determined the AI are to aim at somebody who's shooting. And just a little tidbit of knowledge for those that didn't know. If you are shooting, it's more likely that the enemies will target you as opposed to not. I don't think that's the case for using suppressors. However, I do remember reading that in a long guide. I don't know all the details of it, but I know it's a thing. So I successfully threw in my 12th bag. Begrudgingly decided to leave the 13th one behind in the ocean. If I could have went and swam for it, I would have, but the game wouldn't let me, sadly. So that was my rats, no downs, no assets, almost all loot run. And as usual, thank you guys so much for watching.